All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another podcast episode today. We've got a lot of breaking news to talk about. We're going to go over the weekend's action, including Murat Gassiev and that poor performance from Joyce. We're going to look at Conor Mcgregor and Max Holloway. And then we're going to preview next weekend's action, Diego Pacheco versus Emmanuel Alim especially. We also got some great stuff to talk about in terms of Anthony Joshua and Christian Prenga. So make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's get into it. All right, only one place to start, and that is Joyce losing to Artem Slusnikov in round 11. Joyce basically retiring while standing, giving up, had enough, finished the fight, says, I'm not going to go any further. Now, at that point in the fight, I thought it was a very strange decision. I didn't think Joyce was losing that badly to warrant, saying, all right, I've had enough. But obviously, it's his decision. He's a 40-year-old man. He's a veteran of the sport. He knows when he's had enough, and I think the decision to have enough, like if you talk about in terms of where they were in that fight, I had Slusnikov up in that fight by quite a bit, right? I don't think there was any question that Slusnikov was going to go on and win a decision, but we see some ridiculous scorecards in this sport, and the fact is, there was 4 minutes left to that fight. Joyce, very experienced fighter, and it was such a cagey affair, such a poor, sluggish, slow fight. Lots of it was in the phone booth. Different angles around the ring where the judges are sitting, they could come to very different opinions on how each round was scored. So the fact that Joyce at that point, whilst he was, he hadn't hit the canvas yet, he wasn't being absolutely spanked. Yes, it was getting worse and worse the longer that fight went on. He was definitely fatigued, but he wasn't down and out. And the fact that he made that decision to stop that fight, he says, I've had enough. I don't want to take any more of this beating, I think almost puts into perspective where he is in his career. And the reason that for me, I would say he needs to retire. Like Slusnikov isn't, for me, the greatest heavyweight of all time. Far from it, right? I'd very, very rarely say that he's top 15. Like he is not a very, very good heavyweight at all. Look, he's undefeated, so I think that covers a lot of it. But I think you put this guy in there with any top contender within the top 25, top 20, and he probably loses. And I think the fact that Joyce at 40, we saw what type of Joyce came into that fight. Slusnikov, he looked good. He was definitely the better fighter on the night, but I didn't see anything from him that's really outstanding where I says, all right, he's going to go leaps and bounds and achieve something great. No. So the fact that Joyce in that type of fight against that type of opponent pulls out of it, I think is a clear demonstration that this guy is finished as a professional. And I don't think Joyce 4 or 5 years ago pulls out of that fight, but I think at the age of 40, a lot of fatigue, a lot of ring time for him, there just comes a point where you just don't want it anymore. And I think we saw that in this fight, that Joyce just doesn't want it anymore. He just doesn't have it. And when a fighter reaches that point, you're better off retiring than going in there and getting yourself hurt. For me, Joyce is at that point where it is finished. Look, we're talking about a guy that was Olympic silver medalist, in many people's eyes, the gold medalist, 15-0 as a professional, had stopped Daniel Dubois, Carlos Takam, and Joseph Parker in a run, right? And then it sort of all went downhill. That was at the back end of 2022. Since then, he's lost 5 of his last 6 fights. The only win in there is Cash Ali. It's not been a great run at all. He's been knocked out twice by Zhili Zhang. He's lost to Chisora. He's lost to Hrgovic. And now most recently, Slusnikov. For me, it is finished. It is done. The Joyce story for me should be finished and he should retire. Look, there's nothing left for him. Like, if he'd won this fight, yeah, 100%, you say, all right, go again. You've still got something to offer. But I think the opponent that you lose to, the way that you lost, and the fact that you gave up shows me that hunger, that drive, that want to be in that ring isn't there anymore. Murat Gassiev stops Peter Kadiru, round 6. The towel was thrown in by Kadiru's corner. Right decision. He was getting his ass handed to him from start to finish. I think maybe round 3 was probably his best round, but even that one he probably lost. It was one-way traffic. But look, Kadiru, nobody went into that fight thinking he was going to win it. He came in on short notice, 3 or 4 days. Murat Gassiev needed to win that fight and needed to stop his opponent. He's the world champion. Murat Gassiev is the world champion outright now, WBA champion. He had to go in there and stop Kadiru. He went in there and did it. In some people's eyes, including myself, it probably took a little bit longer than I expected. I actually thought Murat Gassiev would run through him a little bit quicker, but I guess you got to take it 2 ways. Number one, Gassiev was well and truly better than Kadiru, but it probably took him longer than it should have. But at the same time, when your opponent offers absolutely nothing and is shelling up, and Kadiri was the bigger fighter, it is sometimes hard to just get that knockout. It doesn't just magically happen. You have to work for it. You have to get it. And eventually he did do it. I think when you look at Murat Gassiev, outright champion, I think as soon as he gets a test of the highest sort of quality, he will lose. Like you look at some of the people that are ranked high in the WBA, or like people like Moses Atau, Ajit Kabayel, Tyson Fury, and I think AJ are all ranked highly in the WBA. I don't honestly see Murat Gassiev actually beating any of those guys. And depending on which one you get will probably depend on how badly you lose. Because I think you put him in there with Kabayel or Moses Atau, who are two people that he called out following that fight, or at least his team did. Yeah, he's going to get his ass absolutely handed to him. He's not the biggest, all right? We know he's moving up to heavyweight. He's not a very big heavyweight, and he doesn't have what Alexander Usyk has, all right? So for me, undersized heavyweight will probably lose against top quality opponents. So if you're Murat Gassiev, I mean, if you want a big payday, you get one of those fights. If you want to hold on to that belt, I think you got to search for an easier opponent. You got to try and weasel your way to an easier title defense, because any of those top guys, so far from what I've seen from Murat Gassiev in the division, he's not going to beat any of those top guys. Look, his win to get the title was a great win, like a great knockout victory. But I also, if I remember correctly, he was losing that fight up until the point where he actually scored that knockout. Look, I don't want to harp on it too much. He was much the better fighter than Peter Kadiri. There's not much to talk about in that fight because it was one-way traffic from start to finish. Murat Gassiev, far too technical. The speed and technical nous of him, especially the speed, the fact that he is that smaller heavyweight, he was able to just outwork Peter Kadiri, but then you lose what you do in power. And that's, I think, what we saw. I think a big hitter goes in there and absolutely runs through Kadiri. All right, let's get on to the UFC. One of the most disappointing ends to a UFC event I have ever seen. Honestly, like, it's hard to say that the way Tom Aspinall versus Cyril Gane was going to be topped in the way that we were all disappointed, but Conor McGregor coming back, and the very first thing he does is throw a flying kick that, ruptures his knee, does his ACL, does some sort of interior ligament problem, and calls a halt to the contest, which was absolutely devastating. And we're going to come to Conor McGregor. I want to start with some of the other fights on the card. Gable Steveson KOing Alicia Ellison in round one. When I first spoke about that fight post the event, I was probably a little bit too critical on Gable Steveson. I went back and watched the fight. Look, at the end of the day, he went in there against a guy that he should knock out, and in the very first round, he went in there and knocked him out. I think that I said that he was a little bit underwhelming from the hype, and that's not saying that he was poor. That's not saying that the skill isn't there, or the hype isn't there. Like, what I'm saying is, when you hear people talk about Gable Steveson, I guess we probably all expected him to go in there and win in the very first minute, like just run through the guy, a bit like Tom Aspinall did on that run. Just everybody stands in his wake, knockout, 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 straight away, first punch, done, finished. And it's not what we got. And I think that's probably where the underwhelming bit came from. He did get hit a little bit more than I thought he would. And that's another thing. I thought, his defense was a little bit shaky. He got hit quite a few times against somebody that really, he's leaps and bounds better than. So when you look at Gable Steveson, he's got a long way to go to where he wants to get to. I think there's got to be some learning to happen as well. Like, he's so early in his UFC career. So for Gable Steveson, you go in there, you were supposed to knock the guy out in the first round. You did that. Mission accomplished. You looked good in some people's eyes. You looked poor in other people's eyes. It doesn't really matter. I think we're going to see a few more of this level opponent for Gable Steveson until we see a step up. And I think that's the right decision. I think if he goes in there with a top guy, like if he goes in there with Josh Hokett, at the moment, I think he loses. That's a tough fight, man. Josh Hokett is the real deal. And Gable Steveson, as good a wrestler as he is, we're going to have to just wait and see the development of becoming a full outright top MMA fighter. We know how good the wrestling is. We know what people say about him. He's got John Jones in his corner. He's got all the elements to make him that great, but I think we just got to take it one step at a time. He gets the round one knockout. End of the day, he goes in there and does what he has to do. Robert Whittaker, great win for Robert Whittaker. One of the few fighters now that has a win in 3 different divisions. KOing Nikita Krylov in round 3. Started a bit shaky. Rob Whittaker didn't look great in that first round, and I gave Krylov the first round. But from then, excellent work from Robert Whittaker. Started using his boxing skills very, very well. Outboxed Krylov, and by the third round, scores the stoppage victory, breaks his jaw with a good right hand. Great victory for Robert Whittaker. King Green versus Terrence McKinney, round 1, absolute carnage. Like up until the final minute of round 1, Terrence McKinney had almost stopped King Green 2 or 3 times. And then King Green gets the finish right on the buzzer. In my opinion, although Terrence McKinney was very hurt and King Green was on top and definitely dominating that final minute, the fact that the referee stepped in and called a halt to the contest at that time was, for me, the worst decision made on the night. Like, I can't believe that the referee stepped in on the buzzer to stop that. It might have even been after the buzzer. I'd have to rewatch it, but yeah, I think that referee got a little bit too giddy. I think he should have just let it buzzer go, bang, split them up, go to your corners. Let's see what happens at the start of round 2. Especially considering how well Terrence McKinney did for the first 4 minutes of round 1, and the fact that Terrence McKinney basically stood up and walked away straight after they called a halt to the contest. So for me, bad decision. Brandon Royval submits Kavanagh in round 3, by far fight of the night. Great fight by both of them. And the submission at the end by Brandon Royval to just top off an amazing fight. Mario Batista beats a lot of people's favorite, Corey Sandhagen, by a decision. And let's get on to Paddy Pimblett. Paddy Pimblett submits Benoit Saint-Denis via a round 1 Darce choke. He called it. Paddy Pimblett said that what's going to happen, he's going to shoot a takedown, I'm going to lock in the submission, and he's going to go to sleep. And it all happened within, 58 seconds of the very first round. Poor game plan from Benoit Saint-Denis, right? Throws a high kick, charges in for a takedown, doesn't get it properly, gets put in a guillotine choke. Then Paddy Pimblett gets on top on the ground, puts it into a Darce choke, wraps the legs around, and submits him out cold on the floor. A great performance by Paddy Pimblett. I think coming into that fight, I personally had Benoit Saint-Denis as my favorite. I thought, you know what, Paddy Pimblett's good. There's been a bit of a shake in Paddy Pimblett. That unbeatable sort of run is finished after Justin Gaethje. Benoit Saint-Denis on an absolute tear, number 5. I'm going to back Benoit Saint-Denis for a bit of an upset here because in many people's eyes, Paddy Pimblett was the favorite. Boy, was I wrong, because Paddy Pimblett, I can't believe for somebody that is coming sort of off a loss, still the amount of hype. You know, lots of these guys that are a fan favorite, especially ones that haven't become a world champion, the favoritism ends when they lose. The fact that he still carries that fan fest following the loss, I think speaks volumes about what he can accomplish and the amount of people that will come and watch Paddy Pimblett. Like, you put this guy in a UFC fight in Liverpool and it goes absolutely wild. So a great win for Paddy Pimblett. And when you look at what's next for him, I want to see him with Ilya or Justin, to be honest with you. I'm happy with either of those. Even Charles Oliveira. I think the Charles Oliveira fight is a very interesting fight, considering what Paddy Pimblett's so good at and what Charles Oliveira is very good at, and that is submissions. All right, Conor McGregor does his knee with the very first kick he throws, loses to Max Holloway in the rematch, and it looks like a trilogy fight is coming up. We basically spoke about the fight. There's not much to talk about. Jumps. Look, I guess the biggest talking point is, was he injured before the fight? I've seen all the clips online. I've seen him walking to pain management places. I've seen him taking off his shoes in the change room practicing those high kicks. And for me, I don't personally think he was injured coming into that fight. I think he lands wrong. One thing that I did notice in the fights was, like Robert Whittaker's fight, constantly wiping his feet. And I wouldn't be surprised if Conor McGregor, as he lands, foot slips a little bit from under him, the knee pops, and that's where I believe the injury happens. They haven't classified what the injury is. We're going to talk about a little bit of that in the breaking news. But for Conor McGregor, weird game plan, probably at 37 years of age, the wrong game plan. But hey, you practice that all, 3 or 4 months in training. You're practicing it in the locker room. It's all working. And then you step out there and unfortunately it all goes wrong at one point. That's just unfortunate. That's the sport. That's the game that they play. Like, Conor McGregor didn't want to break his leg. He didn't want to shatter it, did he? He didn't want to come in here and do his knee. So it's more disappointing than anything. For Conor McGregor, the big talking points are, was he injured? I don't believe he was injured coming into the fight. And following, do we want to see Conor McGregor back in the ring? And for me, I personally would like to see him back in the ring. I know lots of fans won't. I think if you are ever going to have Conor McGregor back on a fight card, he's still got that one fight. He's saying that he wants to return. In fact, yeah, he's saying he wants to return for that last fight. He's got to be a co-main for me. I don't think you can afford to have Conor McGregor as the main event. I think if you're going to book him, he's not going to like it, but if you're going to book him, he has to be the co-main. because if he gets injured the week of, if he pulls out the week of, if something goes wrong, like a lot of the time recently it does with Conor McGregor, you're risking a lot of the fans' patience if it hasn't already been risked. So for me, if Conor McGregor is going to fight again, he has to be a co-main. He's not going to like it, but unfortunately, you've not been in the sport for 6 years. Every time you seem to come back, it doesn't go right. You can't risk it. And let's get on to the breaking news now, because that is basically everything I want to talk about from the weekend's fights. Let's start with Conor McGregor's statement. All things worked out for my good. All things are possible for me because I'm a believer. Surgery, prehab, return to martial arts, go again, final fight of the contract. So they haven't actually said what the injury is, but it does seem as though Conor McGregor will be undergoing some surgery on that knee. For me, I'm not a doctor, obviously. It doesn't seem like an ACL. It seems like another sort of interior ligament problem within the knee, whether it's PCL, whatever it is. Look, at the end of the day, he is injured. He's needing surgery. I do hope that goes well. If he does want that final fight of the contract, let's go. Let's run it. But for me, he has to be a co-main. I just don't know how you can risk him being a main event. All right. Anthony Joshua versus Christian Prenga. The full card has been released. We're going to start with Hamza Shiraz versus Simon Zackenhuber. That's the one that's really taken the eyes. Now, I knew this fight wasn't going to be great for Hamza Shiraz. They made it pretty clear. After he beat Alan Begich, who I literally said was a cakewalk for him, they said, we're going to have another sort of mediocre fight, and then we're going to line up big fights later this year, next year. So I always knew that when they announced the next Hamza Shiraz fight, it wasn't going to be anything special. The special part was him fighting. All right. And for me, I knew it was going to be against a nobody. And we're getting Simon Zackenhuber. Now, Simon Zackenhuber, he's fought 2 times this year, one of which he lost. Right? One of which he lost. So the fact that he's getting a world title shot is outrageous. Funny enough, one of the people I want to see Hamza Shiraz fight is Jakob Bank. Jakob Bank is on this card, and he's going to be taking on 18-0 Pavel August. Pavel August is actually the guy that beat Simon Zackenhuber earlier this year. So fucking riddle me that. How is the guy that beat Simon Zackenhuber having to fight Jakob Bank really early on the card, and the guy that lost to Pavel August is getting to get a world title shot? So for me, it's completely fucking backwards. I would have loved to have seen Hamza Shiraz versus Jakob Bank. That's a fucking great fight. But we're getting Hamza Shiraz versus Simon Zackenhuber. I expect it to be quite an easy night. And then there's no more excuses. It has to be a big dog. There's so many fighters in super middleweight right now. Like, so many. Jakob Bank. We've got Christian Billy. We've got Lester Martinez. We've got Jaime Munguia. We've got Canelo Alvarez. Right? We've got so much talent in this division. I don't want to be seeing Hamza Shiraz taking on Simon Zackenhuber. All right, Josh Kelly versus Keegan Ajako. That's going to be third. That's for the IBF Super Welterweight belt. That, for me, is fight of the night. All right, that's the one that's got my eye straight away. Keegan Ajako, undefeated professional. His last win was against Ishmael Davis, a very good win. Up against Josh Kelly, who's just coming off that win over Barkram Murtazaliev to secure that IBF title. That, for me, by far, takes my eye for the fight. There's plenty of other fighters on the card. There's Rito Tsutsumi. There is Mikey Talon. There is Nishant Dev. People are on 2 different ends of the spectrum when looking at this card. I know lots of people are really pissed off that it's a shit card. Some people are very content with it. I think if we look at it, the fact of the matter is, this isn't about the card. This fight is about Anthony Joshua versus Christian Prenga. Everything else is a bonus. Do you know how many people come to watch these fights, or should I say buy these fights, go to the event, and just show up for the main event, buy the event just to watch the main event? No, they don't fucking care what the rest of the card is. I will say we have been spoiled over the past few years because of the ring cards have been so fucking great. I don't have that much problem with it. We've got Anthony Joshua versus Christian Prenga, which is what everybody's there to see at the end of the day anyway. You got Hamza Shiraz in a world title fight, Josh Kelly versus Keegan Ajako, which is by far the fight of the night. And then you've got a lot of young talent. You got Rito Tsutsumi, you got Mikey Talon, you got Nishant Dev, you got Jakob Bank. I think Jakob Bank has been fighting all these fights in Denmark. Nobody's watching it. Finally, he gets a stage where he really gets to show why, at 25 years of age, he is a top dog in the super middleweight division. For me, I'm not that mad about it. I'll be honest. I'm not. It's at the end of the day, it's Anthony Joshua versus Christian Prenga. I guess if it wasn't pay-per-view, it would have been taken very differently. I think the fact that it is $60 odd or whatever they're charging for it is the reason that people are up in arms about it. Emmanuel Navarrete versus O'Shaquie Foster is in advanced talks for unification bout. That's the fight to make. By far, that's the fight to make. I actually favor O'Shaquie Foster in that fight. I think stylistically, Emmanuel Navarrete will have a very, very hard time trying to pin down O'Shaquie Foster. If he's able to do it, right, if he's able to close that distance and constantly be in the face of O'Shaquie Foster, he's going to be far too good for him. But from what I've seen in the past few fights of O'Shaquie Foster, he's really, really getting good at holding that distance, using that jab, movement as well, just keeping everybody at arm's length, and we know how long O'Shaquie Foster's arms are. Emmanuel Navarrete does have a bit of an advantage compared to some of the opponents O'Shaquie Foster does. Emmanuel Navarrete is tall, he's long. It's going to be a hard fight, and I think 50-50 most definitely. I think lots of people have different opinions on how that fight goes. I doubted O'Shaquie Foster against Ray Ford. He showed me wrong, and I think coming into this fight, him against Navarrete having that great win over Sugar Nunez, that's a hell of a fight, and we have to see it. Johnny Fisher signs with Zuffa Boxing, and I'm hearing a 7-figure deal. What the fuck is Zuffa? Like, the fact, it actually rots my brain sometimes, the fact that Johnny Fisher is getting a 7-figure deal when some of these UFC champions, top dogs, guys that have been veterans of the sports, are getting fucking peanuts, and they're giving Johnny Fisher, the guy that got knocked out by Dave Allen, 7 figures. It's not going to last. I don't believe it's going to last. They're gonna spend all this money to get as many people on their roster, and as soon as if it does happen, like this is what I think, like if it works out for Zuffa, this is what's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen, but if it works out for Zuffa the way they want, this is what's going to happen. They're going to sign all the top dogs. All of a sudden, everybody's got these long contracts. All right, now you're getting peanuts. Where else are you going to go, buddy? We run this. What are you going to do? You're going to be paid like the UFC fighters do, and you're going to get fucking nothing. Because there's no chance that they can sustain paying people like Johnny Fisher millions of dollars to fight, because Johnny Fisher isn't that guy. Nowhere near it. And I like Johnny Fisher, all right? Bosh. I don't have anything against him, but he's not a 7-figure fighter. Conor McGregor versus Max Holloway. This is outlandish. Conor McGregor versus Max Holloway has a total gate at T-Mobile Arena of $26,430,566 and becoming the highest grossing UFC event in history. All for the main event to go for less than a minute and basically be a no contest, piss absolutely everybody off, and end in complete disaster. The fact that 5 years between fights, 37 years of age, Conor McGregor sells this well, it's fucking unbelievable, man. Imagine how Conor McGregor would be selling right now if the leg didn't shatter, if he was actually fully committed to the sport for the past 10 years. If he was still that superstar that he was in 2015, right? Like, the amount of money these fuckers would be making off this guy is unbelievable. The amount of money he'd be making is unbelievable. Look, he's still filthy rich, so it doesn't really matter. But I can't believe that broke a UFC record, because lots of people will question, does McGregor still sell? Well, there it is. McGregor fucking sells, man. Andy Ruiz signs a deal with Matchroom Boxing. Not much to talk about there. We'll have to see who he fights. The IBA president claims that they offered Bivol twice the money of the first 2 fights, but Bivol's team rejected the fight against Beterbiev for a trilogy. Yeah, it's getting to that point where it does look like Dmitry Bivol, for whatever reason, is ducking a trilogy, which I can't understand. You look at the first fight, Beterbiev, in my opinion, won it, but many people believe Bivol won it. The second fight, there was no question Bivol definitely won it. So Bivol, in many people's eyes, has won at least one. In lots of people's eyes, has won 2. But in nobody's eyes has Beterbiev won 2. So you almost win the first one. In many people's eyes, you did. You definitely win the second one. You've got the momentum. You're the younger fighter. Why is this trilogy not happening? Especially the fact that Beterbiev, even though he didn't have to do it, gave you an immediate rematch after the first fight. I can't work it out. Is these surgeries, are these injuries the reason? Like, Bivol Beterbiev 3 is a much better fight than Bivol versus Callum Smith. And if you're not going to be taking on Beterbiev, then I want to be seeing you take on Benavidez. But yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with Team Bivol. Is this just protecting a legacy? Is this Bivol's injured and he can't compete at that top level anymore? We know the surgeries. He's went for back surgery. He's going for another surgery. Something's going on with Team Bivol. All right, my moments of the week. Only 2 things captured my eye this week, and they were both at the UFC. Number 1, Sophie Cunningham being a ring girl at the UFC, that shit broke me in half. I mean, 2 weeks ago, the meme comes out where she's fucking pointing, and now she is a ring girl at the UFC doing shit in the octagon with Max Holloway. I can't wrap my head around it. I don't know what Dana White's up to with Sophie Cunningham, but why is she the ring girl? Look, she's fine, but we got ring girls for that. The other thing that caught my eye at the UFC, Jalen Williams making a surprise appearance. Yeah, Jalen Williams, the basketball player, sitting front row. The newest Zuffa signing, apparently.
I just paid Shakur Stevenson a shitload of money, and for some reason we can't figure this celebrity shit out. They put him up as a fucking OKC NBA player. Are you fucking kidding me? I mean, it's absolutely crazy, but we are the absolute worst to ever do the celebrity thing. When we put celebrities up, we are the worst. I just had this fucking debate in the back with my guys while I was screaming at everybody back there, and they said, no, soccer's worse. Soccer shows the people and they don't put up any graphics. Oh, no. We put up fucking graphics and put the wrong guy's name on it. We win. We're the worst ever to fucking do it.
How the fuck can the UFC and Zuffa run this shit where they've got Kendrick Lamar's name up there for Terence Crawford, and now their biggest signing, Shakur Stevenson, they're supposed to be promoting the guy and they're giving him the name Jalen Williams? Absolutely fucking pathetic and poor from Team UFC and Zuffa. I don't know what's going on there, but that shit's absolutely hilarious. All right, let's have a quick look ahead at next weekend's action. Diego Pacheco will be taking on Emmanuel Aleem. Aleem coming off that loss to Lester Martinez, which was an absolute shutout loss. And this is where I'm at with Diego Pacheco. We know he ducked that fight, all right, for the WBO title against Hamza Shiraz a few months ago. And now he's taking on Emmanuel Aleem, who's coming off a clear loss to Lester Martinez. Lester Martinez, a top contender in the division. Diego Pacheco, if you're going to be facing someone, you should be taking on Lester Martinez. I don't understand. It's not as though Diego Pacheco is 12 or 13 fights into his professional career. This guy is supposed to be one of the next best, right? And for whatever reason, he's being protected. And you look at his last 3 fights, Steven Nelson, Trevor McCumbee, Kevin Saggio, those 3 easy fights, not one of them he could find the stoppage. Is he getting overhyped? Look, I know he's still young, and I don't want to rip into him too much, but I expected this point of Diego Pacheco's career to be in world title fights. Right? You look at how young Jaime Munguia was when he fought for his world title. I don't understand why they're protecting Diego Pacheco so much. Let's test this guy. Let's put him in there with a top guy. I don't want to see him in there with Emmanuel Aleem. I didn't want to see him in there with Kevin Saggio. How many more of these protection fights are we going to have for him? What, does he have to turn 30 before we see him in a top quality fight? Look, I think he beats Emmanuel Aleem. It's not going to be easy. It's definitely harder than the last 3, but he will win it. He will win it. It'll be a question of, can he stop him or not? And for me, I think I'll be disappointed if he doesn't. I think I'd be disappointed if he doesn't. I think this run, if it extends another one and you can't stop Emmanuel Aleem, no offense to him, yeah, this is his opportunity to really make a statement. Go in there, stop Emmanuel Aleem, say, Lester Martinez couldn't do it. I fucking did. No, Lester Martinez couldn't do it. I just fucking did it. That's what he's got to come out and do. And I'll be more than impressed if he can do it, especially if he can do it in lightning fashion. The other fight on the card is Andy Cruz versus Abraham Montoya. Not honestly expecting much from Abraham Montoya. Let's be honest. Like, Andy Cruz versus Albert Bell was going to be a very, very good fight. All right, I think that was a very, very good fight. Abraham Montoya could throw up absolutely anything. Short notice opponent. It's short notice, it's like 2 weeks or so, but it's short notice, especially up against a guy like Andy Cruz. Andy Cruz is elite of elite. I know he lost to Raymond Muratella, but don't misunderstand how good Andy Cruz is. And apparently, after this fight against Abraham Montoya, Andy Cruz will be officially stepping down in weight. So that will be interesting. If he can go down in weight, he's going to have, like, you saw him against Raymond Muratella. Muratella was much, much the bigger fighter. If you can step down in weight and you can start being the bigger fighter, yeah, the power's going to come through. You're going to be outskilling everybody. And we know how good he is. All right, we all saw him at the Olympics. We've all seen what he's done in his short professional career. The talent is there. He was this close to beating Raymond Muratella. This close. If you're saying that he moves down in weight, looks even better, looks even bigger, you're going to see the clear improvements. Look, I expect him to beat Abraham Montoya. I expect him to do it quite handsomely as well. Guys, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. Only a shorter podcast today. I do apologize on that. I've been very busy, but to be fair, there hasn't actually been a lot to talk about. I didn't do a podcast last week because there was absolutely nothing to talk about. I am trying to make more short content on Instagram, on TikTok, so make sure you've headed over there. We're pumping out these videos, guys, so make sure that if you are new, you like, you subscribe, and I'm out of here, guys. See ya!